Hello, I'm Caroline Marshall, and welcome to Bump to Business Owner, the podcast speaking to mums in business, you. I'll be in conversation with some of the most inspiring women and mothers in enterprise about their journey, how they created their successful businesses alongside raising their children, and what that looks like in work and family life. Hello and welcome back to Bump to Business Owner. I'm your host Caroline Marshall, and we've got a special another solo mini episode today, which I'm so excited to record because I actually only got the idea for this episode this week. So today we are going to be talking about when should we be taking sales calls from our clients in line with our childcare schedule. I have been on such a journey with this. Having seen someone on social media talk about this recently and thinking I was doing fine, I've really had a recent experience of like, oh, do I take the call or do I say no, tomorrow's fine, it's bedtime. So we're going to talk about what this looked like when I was on maternity leave. How did I manage clients and phone calls? What this looks like when school hours started. I think this is such an important part to talk about, especially if you don't have access or choosing not to do wraparound care and your day finishes at 2. And also what happens when your child ends up sick and off sick, and also my experiences of this. I've got some fantastic client case studies who've been extremely supportive and a really bad example. So stay with us. So many people, mothers, go freelance or run their own small businesses, and they're not working 5 days a week. So they've got to have those boundaries in place, and it's finding that balance of, do I say no, do I say yes? And I thought this was really interesting. There's a couple of people that made me think about this episode. There's a lady called Angelica Malin. I hope I've said that right. On Instagram, she's a speaker, a host. I've actually seen her a couple of times hosting at Albright International Women's Day event. She's super cool, super inspiring, lives in New York, love it. She has a little child, and it was her Instagram post that made me think about this, because she had issues with childcare one day. Basically, clearly, same happens over in America as here, is that her kid was sick and wasn't in nursery that day. So her day was booked for a ton of calls for her to get booked for work for the next year. So a super important day. You know, sometimes you just have those days and you're like, I really don't need the kids to be sick or for anything to go wrong. I just need this day to run so I can get through all of this. She decided, as well, her little one, still little, in a buggy, to just go with it, take the calls. Love it. You know, you've got to make this decision sometime. I can hugely appreciate, I've been there as well, but it made me think. And so I was actually reading this post one evening. It was just me and my youngest at home, and I was like, oh, thank goodness I don't have that anymore. I don't know why I thought I don't have that anymore. I think I thought, oh, thank goodness I feel I'm in a place where I can put in these boundaries and not have to do the calls. And that wasn't true, because then, funnily enough, I actually had a missed call from a potential client that evening at 6:00. I texted him and said, oh, you know, thank you for your call. Yes, we can chat tomorrow. Let's do it in the morning. And he messaged me back going, oh, yeah, let's do that. Or we can chat now if it's easier. And I was like, sat there. I have my youngest at home, and I was sat there at 6:00 going, I mean, I could talk now. And I was like, no, we're just going to talk tomorrow. My diary's clear. His diary's clear. Let's do this tomorrow. And it was so worth it, just being able to get a call with him, see his face, make a proper connection about his business rather than doing it that evening. But it was interesting because I thought I'd come so far, and then almost immediately the universe told me, no, Caroline, you still struggle to say no as well. And actually, it wasn't just Angelica's post that brought this to me. I had a lovely call recently with 2 VAs who are expecting babies. One of them, it's their second, so she's kind of used to it already. The second girl was expecting twins. Very exciting / oh wow. And she we were talking about a role she's bringing in to help her run the business. She's doing amazing things, putting the right things in place. And she asked me if I ever had anyone to help cover sales. And I said, actually, no, I haven't. I felt my business is in a place right now for someone else to do the sales justice, and that's still with me. And I have no intention of letting go of sales there's no plan of that in the next 3 years. Potentially all the admin, yes, everything that comes with sales, but the actual sales. And so we were talking about this and the sort of person that would be and if it was right for her. And what her struggle was like, well, I don't know. Like, what if a client asks for a call on, say, Tuesday at 2:00? I just don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And I was just like, yes, you just don't know. And it was kind of a bit of a hard, uncomfortable truth of that's basically how it will go. You don't know, and you can't. And I tried to say you can't. It was hard to say it, but I was like, you kind of get used to not knowing if you can, that you can do it, or if you can do it one week but not the next. And especially in the early years, I think while sickness happens, urgent things happens, but that's life. And that's more likely to happen when you have kids. I do think the early years are particularly challenging, especially if you are still looking to grow your business and you're still on part maternity leave. So it was a hard chat to have. So I thought actually this was something really valuable to bring the podcast, is my experience of it and my learnings of it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is some of the good experience where I've had with that when I've not said no, and some I've had a really bad experience putting in a call when I've had kids around. So I think we also want to debate on this today is, do you take the call with your kids around and be completely transparent? And this is like a world we all want to live in, right? Where we can be like, oh yes, I can do the call, but I've got my kids around, or they're off sick today, which I do think is different to when you're in the early years and you're diary is everywhere, versus when you've got a child at home sick and you can give them television. I've now got a 6-year-old. It's very different if he's off sick versus when I've had a toddler screaming in a buggy or just wanting to climb on me. I do think it's easier. Not everyone will agree with that, but that's my hope for anyone who's still got toddlers and little ones climbing all over you. Or do you put those boundaries in place and, I don't want to say this, but risk losing the sale, losing the client, risk a bit of that experience, which I'm not saying it is, but that's how we feel. And that's ultimately why we're not saying no to these calls. So when I was on mat leave, I actually did find things a little bit easier with calls. And I'll tell you why. Once I got to a stage where I was taking calls and I could. So I was part lucky was that it was COVID. My husband was at home. He also got made redundant. So I had those bubbles where I could take calls and could navigate it with him. When the world opened up, I actually used Bubble app to help me. And because calls are normally scheduled, so also that's probably a bit of London privilege I had as well, and maybe a bit of COVID privilege as well. There's more babysitters around. Bubble app, I don't know, I haven't used it in a while, but I would schedule a call and use Bubble app. Or I also, at this point, I had the gym crash for 2 hours a day, so I'd really try hard to schedule calls during that time, which was really quite actually intense. If I just did calls for 2 hours and then had to go pick up my kid, that was like a brain overload. God bless anyone who's doing that now. So that is how I would tend to manage it. I think in that first year, I didn't really have to I didn't have as many sales. My business was still very small. And it was when it was 2022, things really started to kick off I needed to kick off so I could take that income I needed. My baby was over a year old then. And also the sort of clients that were coming in were the sort of clients I wanted to work with on those bigger packages, bigger retainers, and just a sizable business. And I knew the sort of clients I was used to working with when I was employed VA. But the challenge with that was my eldest son, had started at preschool to prepare him for reception. And we were introduced to school hours. And we had no wraparound care because he was only 3. So no wraparound care, no like clubs after school or anything like that. So I was literally leaving my desk at 2. And this actually, I struggled with more. So I still had 2 days a week at home with my 1-year-old, and then it was school hours the other 3 days. So actually my time felt significantly reduced. And then we still had COVID hanging over us. So one day I had a really important call with a client, and my son was off school with COVID. He didn't have COVID, his key worker had COVID. And I thought, fine, I'm going to put him in the gym crash. I'm just going to do the call. My signal stopped working. So I managed to put him in crash. My signal stopped working. I did the call outside in January. I was so cold. And this guy, he's still a client now. It all worked out, but very detailed, worked with the VA before. Some sales calls can be quite quick. This one was like a full half an hour. Bless him. He understood completely. He was a dad. So I was just transparent and being like, and it was a COVID world as well. I think everyone had a little bit more empathy for these situations of like, my kid is off preschool because his key worker has COVID. He's in nursery. The signal stopped working. So if you're happy, I'm just going to take the call here. No one else was outside, so it was private. And I got the client. So I think sometimes there's a lot to be said about, okay, this is what I'm working with. I'm going to do it and I'm going to be transparent about it. But that for me, at the stage he was at, he was only 3. It was still easier to put him in childcare than having running around while I was doing the call. So yeah, that is one of my success stories from it. But I also want to appreciate that school hours is such an adjustment, and it is an adjustment with your time working. But this is what I want to bring up, is it's such an adjustment when you've got to put in those boundaries in place with clients. And I've had times I've not done that, and I've been doing phone calls while on the school run. Bless in reception, I was on the bus with 2 of my kids, so they were only 4 and 2. Real hard stage, 4 and 2, or at least it was for us. Still in our very much recovery journey for post NICU trauma, so quite heightened senses as well, feeling very overstimulated, overtouched. And I was trying to do a call with a client, and oh gosh, another mum on the bus just helped me out with my kids from school, another mum from school, and I'm always so grateful for that. But I look back on those days because I don't have that so much now, and I think because I've really just learned nothing's that important. It sometimes it is, and I'll always answer the call, but I'm completely transparent because I'm like, well, if you're just going to call me out the blue, I need to tell you I'm happy to take the call, but I'm with my kid. I think that's a really good thing to do and I've done that actually with a sale. So I think that's always a red flag with a sale, by the way, is when someone calls you and they have to talk to you there and then, and you said, like, I'm happy to take the call, but I'm with my 2-year-old, and they're clearly screaming in the background. I mean, like, screaming. She's like, yeah, I just need someone now. And it is, we did bring on that client. They then went to go outsource cheaply abroad. It didn't work out, and I think it was a bit of a red flag for that mindset of like, I need someone yesterday, and taking a very uncomfortable call with a stressed mother when I was like trying to give other options of doing it. So I have said yes to the call, and the call worked out. Technically it was a success. It wasn't the right client for Upsource, but it was a successful sales call, but was a success with how I felt. And I think that's something else we need to think about. It's not just, is the call going to be a success? Am I going to feel like I'm doing a good job for my child at the same time, or for myself? Let's make this about us as well, because if we feel we're okay, then the child will be okay. So I think then at one point, maybe it was that year of 2022, we had a lot of sales. I think I'd got quite used to juggling calls and kids, and I horrendously said yes to a sales call while I remember this. It was what I think my kids were there. I was at home with them after school. My husband wasn't there. I don't know why I said I'd do this call. There was no rush for this call. I think I wasn't in the right frame of mind at this point. And I got some really harsh feedback about doing this call around my kids. I mean, I think it shows this client was not the client for us. But there was definitely learnings I took from that, though, constructively. But we were definitely too expensive for her. We weren't the right service for her anyway. But I got some really, really harsh feedback about doing that call around children. Yeah, really not pleasant, not kind, let's say. I took it on board. So I think sometimes maybe you need a situation to be the push you need to be like, okay, I'm never going to do this again. If people want to work with my business, they have to wait. And they don't even wait that long. I'm very quick on calls. I get compliments quite a lot with how speedy I am with the clients, because it's at the end of the day, like, it's not that often they reach out to me. So the courtesy thing I can do is make sure that I'm on it with them, and that's just always how I'm going to be, because I want them to have a great service. So that starts with the sales. So it might be that I can't hop on a call, but it might be I can't hop on a call because I'm at an event, just because it's children. And I think that's something I wanted to bring to, going back to that time where I was sat on the sofa with my child only a couple of weeks ago going, do I take the call? And it's like, actually, no, this isn't a good time. Do I tell him why? And I was like, I did. So I still had this debate because I wasn't sure. I was like, meh. I mean, it's 6 o'clock. I can text people and email. That's fine. But I was like, no, bedtime's about to kick off, so it'll be best we can do it tomorrow, where I can give you my full focus. And yeah, literally, he was like, yeah, great. He had no issues with it. So it was definitely the right call to make. But it's just so I just wanted to share that it's still a debate in my head of when I do these calls, and that I don't think that'll change. I think sometimes, you've got to make this judgment based on your experience, based on the client, based on how much you need some sales, how much you need to retain your clients and show them you care. I don't think it will change that something, whether it's childcare, which I just think at this stage of life, that's the most likely thing that's going to be stopping me from sales calls right now. And I also want to share there are positives. So that client was very happy for me to push back and say, no, I'm not taking the call till tomorrow because it's bedtime. And this client 2 years ago, I sat outside freezing with numb hands doing the sales call, and he's still with us now. But I have also had some bad experiences, both making me feel like I'm not doing a good enough job as a mother, but also getting some quite harsh feedback from a sales call that I shouldn't have taken. And I think this is a really important area to talk about, by the fact I have spoken to someone who is pregnant with their first babies, and that's her worry, and also seeing someone on Instagram be so open about struggling with a day full of calls when their child has been called in sick. So just so you know, you aren't alone, and I think you need to start thinking about what's really important in that moment, and understanding just because you're getting some childcare doesn't make those sales or urgent calls any easier. So be kind to yourself. It's hard. I'm still figuring it out. I may come again with some more experiences for you. But as I share, my kids are 6 and 4. And I still have that internal dialogue going on of how much do I share? Because not all our clients, some of you may serve mothers, and that's your businesses and that's your clients. And that's great. I love that you can do that. But ultimately, my business with Upsource, it's a whole demographic of clients, and not all of them will get it. It doesn't mean they're going to be bad clients. It just means they don't understand the stage of life that I'm at, which is okay. That was me 15 years ago, and that's okay. We can all learn experiences. So I'm very open with the team, and that's something I'm encouraged, is to be out loud with the team. And if a team member was ever coming to me of being like, oh, they want to do a call, but this is the time, they know this is time I'm with the kids, I would absolutely be reinforcing their boundaries. But I just think it's good to share that with ourselves. We're not always as kind. So I would love to know your experiences. Please message me. Have you done some amazing calls where you've been worrying about your kids being in the background, or having to set some boundaries, and the clients have gone above and beyond to make you feel comfortable with your situation? Or like me, have you had some you should have said no to, and they've not been so kind in response? Do let me know, because if we're all sharing this, we can all normalise it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. Thank you so much for listening to Bump to Business Owner. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do rate, review, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us to connect with more mums and business owners. You can DM me on @BumpToBusinessOwner on Instagram, and I'll be back next week.